Do I need an LLC to flip a house? You've probably heard you need an LLC to flip a house, but is that actually true? Let's clear up the confusion. Should you flip a house in your personal name or under a business entity? I'll break down when you really need an LLC and what it actually protects you from. By the end of this video, you're going to learn the pros and cons of flipping with or without an LLC and when it's important to make the switch from your personal name to an LLC. Okay, so most people when they flip their first house just do it in their personal name because they don't know any better. And I understand why. It's simple. It feels daunting having to set up an LLC or a separate business entity to flip houses. Now you might say, well, what's an LLC? Well, an LLC is a limited liability company. It's a separate entity that you establish that has its own what's called employer identification number, which means in the eyes of the IRS, it is a different entity or a different person, shall we say, that is responsible for different things. But we have to treat it as such. Why would you want one? Well, I'll tell you that when you first start, you'll mostly do your first flip in your personal name, but you're going to quickly realize you're going to want protection. One of the main things the LLC does is it protects you in the event of an accident or a lawsuit. Let's say that you are flipping a house in your personal name and a contractor or a contractor's helper actually falls off the roof and gets hurt. I'll tell you that in some states, including New York where we operate, the person could be drunk, stoned, and the act of committing a crime, and if they fall off the roof, it's my responsibility. Go figure. I don't really understand that, but whatever. Nonetheless, I am responsible as the property owner. That means that if they win a lawsuit, they could actually come after my personal assets as well, including my personal home, my retirement accounts, and a lot of things that would make my life really difficult. So if you have a separate LLC that you run your flip through, that's a separate entity. And provided you treat it as a separate entity, the lawsuit stops with that LLC. They can no longer come after the owners if you are incorporated in the right state. Look, there's a lot of complications to this, and I'm going to advise you to talk to an attorney to really understand in depth how this works. I'm giving you a general overview of protection and tax assets. I am not a lawyer, nor am I a tax professional, but I know enough to be dangerous. So let's continue on. You know, it also keeps you looking professional, right? When you have a business card and it has an LLC or a business name on it, it looks a lot more professional than just saying, here, I'm Joe Blow and I flip houses. But having an actual name to a company makes you look more professional when you're talking to sellers. It makes you look more professional when you're talking to real estate agents. And it makes you look a lot more professional talking to bankers and people you'll do business with. There's a lot more to it than just having a fancy name on your company. It also looks very impressive when you're trying to raise money through private lenders, and they understand that you're taking your business seriously. It's not just you working out of the trunk of your car. So the big question is, should I do it now or after I do my first flip? I'm going to highly recommend that you do it now just to get yourself protected. I mean, why take the risk? It's a few $100s to have an LLC set up. So get it set up and then start to buy your properties inside the LLC. Now the big question is, wait, can I get loans and stuff? And can I borrow money inside the LLC? You can, but you will personally guarantee those until your business gets big enough where it has its own credit rating. The big question is it required? And the answer is, it's not required. But you have to decide if you're willing to take the risk of a possible lawsuit if someone gets hurt on your property. Let's talk about the tax implications of an LLC versus flipping in your personal name. When you flip in your personal name, any income that you make is subject to income tax, of course, but also self-employment tax, which is a lot more. I think it's 15.3%. Don't hold me to that. But you're going to pay more if it's in your personal name. If you flip in the name of a business entity, and this is where it gets complicated, you should have a conversation with your accountant. Most of the time, your accountant will have you select to be what's called an S Corp. Again, talk to your accountant about that. But as an S Corp, you might be able to avoid paying self-employment tax, which is a significant savings to your bottom line. There's also expenses you can write off because you have a business. Yes, you can write them off in your personal name, but if you have a business name, it's much easier to write off expenses like home expenses, home office expenses, your car, and a lot of different things inside the business that you can write off against your income. So Glenn, how do I set up an LLC? Well, look, our students are recommended to a provider that we use that strongly recommends that you set up your LLC in either Nevada, Wyoming, or Delaware. Why? Because there's a lot of laws that protect us differently in those states if our LLC is set up in those states, because the laws of an LLC are applicable only in the state that they're incorporated in. Now, if you live in a different state, you still have to pay tax in that state if it's required. All that's the same. It's the protection piece that you're looking for. The biggest thing is that in those states, there are no what's called charging orders. Charging orders means that if a lawsuit is won in other states besides those states, they can actually go after the owners of the LLC personally. Wonderful. That defeats the whole purpose of an LLC. However, if you're in Wyoming, or if you're in Nevada, or if you're in Delaware, there is no such thing as charging orders, which means that they cannot pierce the corporate veil. You may have heard that term before, and they can't come after you personally. It's also a lot more difficult for them to find out who the actual members or owners of that LLC actually are. So it gives you some anonymity in the marketplace, so people just can't take frivolous lawsuits against you because, as you get bigger and make more money and you get more exposure, people sometimes think that they should get some of your money. And you want to make sure that doesn't happen. Here's a final tip I'm going to give you on how to make sure that you are protected in the event of a lawsuit. No commingling of funds. Make sure that you have an accounting team or a bookkeeping team and you keep business expenses under the LLC and you keep personal expenses under the personal side of your life. If you keep those two things separately and work with an accountant, that'll make sure you're protected. Because in the event of a lawsuit, they're going to pull your records and they see that you're just commingling funds and you're borrowing money from this corporation and taking it over here. Remember, two separate entities. So if you can keep them as two separate entities, financially speaking, you'll be protected. Now, whether you use an LLC or not, you should get really clear on exactly what you want to buy. After 1,200 deals, I can tell you that I have learned the best houses to buy for the highest profit. And we put that in what's called our buy box. I want to teach you what a buy box is and how you can actually have the best buy box for you to make the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time. So go to my training here, click the link, and learn about your buy box, see what it is, and see how it can make your business much more successful.